Okay, so it says a keynote, but I think it's more like a warm-up act for the next show, for the panel on academics and fintechs, which is where I come in. So I'm a finance academic, and this festival, it's interesting. So it's called Unchain. Like many of you, I grew up in Central Eastern Europe, in my case, Ukraine, Lithuania. Unchained reminds me of the proletariat has nothing to lose but their chains. Sounds familiar, Communist Manifesto. The next line is workers of the world unite. So I don't know how I feel about that, but my manifesto is fintechs and academics of the world unite. I'll tell you why. So I'm a finance academic. How do you describe a finance academic? It's someone who says, well, it works in practice, but does it work in theory? It might sound silly, but it's actually a very good question, because if something, if you understand how something works in theory, it can help you understand when it might stop working in practice. It might help you understand what would help it work better in practice. So these are important questions, but normally we finance academics don't hang around fintech conferences. This is an exception. There's a few of us here. We're approaching 1%. At Money 2020, I was 1 out of 8,000. And so this leads to problems such as the demand for research and the supply of research can be severely misaligned. So, for example, a lot of fintechs are working on payments. Very few academics are working on payments. How can we fix that? Well, we fix that if academics and fintechs start talking. And in fact, we have the same interest. Both academics and fintechs, we're interested in how to make the world better, how to eliminate inefficiencies, which you fintech people call pain points. Except that we make the world better by writing papers, and you do it by actually making the world better. But we should be fellow travelers. And so what can an academic give you? Or, sorry, let's start with what you can give an academic so I can convince you that we are actually really interested. We want to publish interesting research. One thing we need for this is interesting research questions. How do we feel the pulse of what actually is happening in the real world? If we do it by reading another research paper that's several years old that says, here are suggestions for future research, that's not very timely. Even if we read the Financial Times, that's not very timely. We should feel the pulse of what actually is happening in the real world, and talking to fintechs is a way to do that. You can give academics your data, anonymized of course, and academics will take a deep dive into this data, and they'll be very happy because it's much better than using a standard data set that everyone else uses where you don't have a competitive advantage. We can collaborate on what a fintech would call A/B testing. We would call it a randomized controlled trial. Incredibly valuable to an academic because it allows you to nail down causality and not just correlation, and this means you can publish your research in the best journal. And that's our incentive. So really, I don't know if I'm giving away a big secret here, but we don't really need to be paid. I mean, yes, money is always nice, but for academics, our incentives are to publish in the best journals. And so we can be de facto a research department for the entire fintech sector. And so how can academia benefit your fintech? There is a long list of benefits. Let me just name a few. You can get sort of big picture input on your fintech from an expert academic. You can learn about relevant cutting edge theoretical work. You can collaborate with scholars to test hypotheses, and in the process you gain credibility from saying I collaborated with such and such university. You can screen potential scientific advisors for your fintech. You can gain privileged access to the best students and graduates. You can future-proof your fintech by anticipating critique from academics and others. You can have, importantly, a deep sort of first principles discussion with an academic about the frictions that your fintech is seeking to alleviate. So essentially, a theorist, for example, can design a model of a world where a particular friction that you are seeking to eliminate or alleviate does not exist. Compare this to the world as it exists today and estimate the scope for gain from what your fintech is doing. You can, of course, stay up to date with empirical research that's related to your fintech. You can brainstorm about your next, the design of your next product or your strategy or your pivot, and you get to influence the academic research agenda, potentially influencing regulators in a direction that hopefully benefits you as well. So again, academia can be your fintech's free research department. So how do you find the relevant academic? That's an interesting question. One natural resource that many fintechs are not aware of is something called Social Science Research Network, ssrn.com. There are hundreds of thousands of studies there by academics in all areas of finance. You can see whatever you're working on, blockchain, payments, crowdfunding, you can see who's working on this, and you can simply email them. And chances are pretty good that they'll be very flattered to hear from you and will want to discuss with you. Still, it's not a very efficient search process, and it also tells you who the academics are who already worked on the topics that interest you, rather than who are open to collaborating with you. So this is where I'll do a quick plug. It's not going to be very long, but I am organizing an event called Future Finance Fest, which is going to bring academics and fintechs together. It's going to be in Vilnius, Lithuania, 25th to the 27th of August. If you look up my profile on the app, you will see the details. I'll be happy to tell you about this. There'll be academics from top universities like London Business School, Oxford University, Cambridge, Stanford, University of Michigan, National University of Singapore, University of Melbourne. They're all coming knowing that that's an opportunity to meet fintechs, to collaborate with them. We're still accepting proposals for presentations from fintechs and for panel discussions. Again, if you look up Future Finance Fest in Vilnius, you will see our website. Beyond this, we're planning on building a community where there are webinars, there are hackathons, different flavor of hackathons, where a fintech proposes a challenge and academics address this question. And most importantly, the idea is to encourage dialogue between academics and fintechs, very much like the panel that's going to, that's coming up right after me. And I am very grateful to Unchain for encouraging this dialogue. And I'm very much looking forward to this following panel, because academics stand to gain from this collaboration between academics and fintechs. Fintechs stand to gain, but most importantly, the world stands to gain from it. Thank you very much.